talking about inclusion all this week, but I specifically wanted you to come in and talk a little bit about what you guys refer to as EF, those executive function skills, because as we've been talking about inclusion and what works and what doesn't work, what I'm coming down to, what it's boiling down to me for this week is that a lot of times the difference of whether a child is successful in inclusion or not depends upon the child's ability to have executive function skills, because we've talked this week about how we have to prepare the teachers for inclusion.
Right.
But a lot of times when there's a stumbling block, it has to do with something executive functions. And I don't think that the teachers have been trained yet in terms of how to teach that. And I think as parents, we can be empowered to be working on that stuff at home outside the classroom. So I think of you as the EF queen. I don't know if I've shared that with you before. but you know, I've asked a lot of people to explain executive functions to me, and nobody does it like you do.
Oh, well, that's sweet of you to say.
Well, so explain executive functions to our folks watching at home.
Well, before I get into that, you just hit something that is standing out to me, which is that to get a child ready for inclusion, you might do a lot of things and think, okay, now they're ready. Like, what do you think the typical person probably thinks of when they have in their mind, okay, this kid's ready for inclusion? What is the kid able to do? He
or she is able to attend, to focus, and pay attention to the teacher, follow rules, successfully monitor themselves. So, because otherwise, you know, if they're in another classroom, there's direct one-on-one aids, and there are people who are prompting them every step along the way and doing stuff at their own speed.
Yeah.
So for me, inclusion means they've got to be able to manage themselves a little bit so that they don't disrupt the rest of the class.
Okay.
And can focus enough that they can be on task without being prompted all the time.
So you just basically talked about a ton of executive function skills right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about being focused. That's attention. There's lots of skills involved with executive functioning. All of them have to do with kind of organizing oneself, like things that we do to keep ourselves on track, things that we do to help ourselves achieve a goal that we have in mind. And we do these things, we keep ourselves attending to the right things, focusing, being able to do things for longer periods before we get bored with it or we can't handle it anymore. If there's distractions, then we have learned to ignore them. That's inhibition. Or if there's certain behaviors that we kind of feel like we have to engage in, we're able to inhibit and not do it, and we can wait until it's appropriate. You talked about self-monitoring and self-management. That would be simply, you know, if you have a behavior you know that you do and you don't want to be doing it, or there's a goal that you should do it less or something, you might monitor yourself doing that.
Yeah.
But you hit the nail on the head. The things you didn't mention was memory.
Yeah.
A lot of times, in order to be successful, you have to actually be able to remember things. This is very interesting to me. Sometimes teachers will give instructions to children. So they'll stand in front of the class, they have an assignment, and they are explaining to the kids in the classroom, here's your assignment and here's what you need to do. Then she says, okay, everybody do it.
Right.
And then the child on the spectrum, while they understood the instructions, they're completely capable of actually doing the assignment. It's not that they don't have the skills to do whatever it is. They literally just sit there and end up not doing something, and that gets misinterpreted sometimes as non-compliance.
Right.
I've noticed that a lot with executive functioning skills, is that sometimes people actually refer to it as the child's being non-compliant. In reality, it could be literally that they can't remember.
Yeah.
So they have a hard time with that kind of stuff.
Right.
So they have to be able to remember and recall information. And it's a difficult area of things that you have to kind of like put together and intermix. But sometimes I think, more traditionally speaking, people will think, oh, this child's ready for inclusion because she knows her colors, letters, can read, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they look more on the skill level and they go, well, she's right on target with her grade level for skills, so
yeah,
she should be included. But what they forget about is that in order to function in a classroom environment where there's lots of other kids and only maybe one teacher and an aide or two, you're in a completely different world. You have to be able to really be on top of your game.